Imagine you live in perfect world. You didn't hear me wrong. I don't mean a perfect world. I mean perfect world, the video game. Slowly, the more you play the game, the more its adventurous valleys and dynamic roles take you into an alternate world. And the easier it becomes for you to forget the very real, imperfect world around you. In the game, you find the perfect escape from your sometimes nagging parents, your tumultuous dating life, the pressures of the academic world, or your sometimes shaky sense of self. But when the computer screen shuts, as it has to, the real world returns. Only now it seems harsher, more cruel, more unforgiving, until there remains only one solution in your mind: to bring your real world to an end. This scenario, as dystopian as it may sound, was the very real state of mind of a young Bangladeshi-Canadian boy unable to reconcile perfect world with his world. This is the story of the Toronto quadruple murder. This is the story of Menhaz Zaman. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Aishwarya.
And I'm Aryaan.
And the case that I have for you today is one that is increasingly common in today's age, yet as gut-wrenching as ever.
All I know about this case, Aishwarya, is that it has something to do with the so-called Discord killer.
Correct.
If you want to become a Discord killer, you can join our Discord, the Desi Crime Discord.
It's not at all.
Link. That's not how it works.
Totally off script.
That's not how it works. But we do have a Desi Crime Discord, the link for which is in the bio, so you can go check it out.
Do it. We're beginning this story at 3 p.m. on the afternoon of Saturday, the 27th of July 2019, when the Discord server Perfect World Void had hundreds of its members online. You see, Perfect World Void was a server dedicated to players of the game Perfect World, described online as an adventure and fantasy game with magical weapons, evil monsters, conquests, treasures, and so much more. As rightfully described by the name of the game, Perfect World was and is home to literally another world. In this online world were countless very real players, many of whom were on this Discord server chatting away on the afternoon of Saturday, the 27th of July. Now, I'm not even going to pretend to know what the conversations on a gaming Discord server are like. In fact, I have a hard time navigating even our Desi Crime Discord, but nothing about the server was different that afternoon.
Aishwarya, for all the sort of, I think, millennials and people above that age, even me to an extent, right?
Yeah, me too.
I'm not fully sure what Discord is.
Yeah.
And so to explain what Discord is, we have invited a Discord expert on our podcast, a man by the name of Evan Thomas. Evan, can you come on screen and tell us what
Evan.
Discord actually is? Now in front of the mic.
Welcome, Evan.
Lean in.
So I joined Discord almost 4 years ago, and it's a place where I talk to my friends while I'm gaming. So it's a huge community of gamers, originally gamers. Now it's a bigger community of people just trying to communicate with their friends. It basically popped off during lockdown, and that's how we all
Like,
stayed together.
how is it different from a WhatsApp or
A video call.
a
just
video
that you're
call?
having.
Like, how is
Why
Discord as a
Discord?
platform so
The-
different?
And inherently, the functioning of Discord is for gamers only.
Oh,
So
know.
because it has their own gaming, like they have mini games inside the servers, you can talk to your friends. It has very good game compatibility towards
see.
other games. So you get these overlays on top of your games. Where it shows who's speaking when.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thank you for your time, Evan.
Thanks, Evan. Bye-bye.
Our in-house Discord expert.
Conversations and calls on this Discord server, Perfect World Void, were going per usual, with some being about the game and others about the days and lives of the players themselves. Things were going as usual until one member on the server with the eerie name Subhuman, a person who was an elf priest in the game, posted an even elf priest, I can't.
This is, dude, these, it's like it's a world on the internet that is very weird.
Very weird.
And not to frown upon it, because we're not part of it, so I don't fully understand the subculture and its lingo.
Aryaan, it's absolutely a crazy world online. It's the elf priest part that gets to me.
Makes
I don't
no
know what the
sense.
hell an elf priest is, but it obviously is a very different world online. Now this eerie named person, Subhuman, a person who was an elf priest, posted an even eerier message on the server. I've just slaughtered my mom and granny. Now, Aryaan, clearly we've both established we don't know much about this world.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you know friends who are gamers. I'm sure you've played games in your own
Yeah.
time, whatever. How common is really dark humor? Because that's all I've heard about these servers online, is that dark humor. Things like the sentence that person just posted
Yeah.
being considered a joke are very common. Slurs are very common. It's kind of like the wild, wild west on there.
Aishwarya, yeah, I mean, it is a community where, owing to the anonymity, right, that you're afforded, you sort of let your worst selves shine through. I've seen this with many people, and let's just ask our in-house Discord expert: Is Discord rife with dark humor?
Yes,
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Dark humor, slurs,
Yes,
offensive
Discord
language.
can be a very not so safe place to be on.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
it could really harm you if you're not mature enough.
Could really harm you if you're not mature enough.
Makes
Okay.
sense. Just like Aryaan, myself, and Evan, members on this Discord community kind of know the nature of Discord and so don't make anything serious of this text. Firstly, because online communication seemed to be full of humor of this kind. Secondly, because this player, Subhuman, was particularly known for deeply offensive and dark humor of this kind. In the past, Subhuman has changed his name to, quote, don't deserve life, has joked about committing suicide, and how he believes he's a coward and is worthless. He's also mentioned countless times to people on this server that he's soon going to go to jail. In fact, he had even gotten temporarily banned from this server multiple times for saying the wrong thing and pissing the wrong person off, but he always managed to come back on the server eventually, with the most recent ban coming in July itself for, quote, racist statements he repeatedly made. But these jokes to the other people, these insults to himself, have happened over many months and years, but nothing ever truly came of it in the past. Subhuman, whose previous server name was also Allah, never actually took his own life and never went to prison or ever hurt anyone else. And so over time, people began to identify him with what they considered to be just his weird brand of humor. And so, even after this text from him claiming he had killed his mother and grandmother, the server didn't go up in arms. They kind of engaged him. To make the server believe he truly had killed them, just minutes after Subhuman had sent this text, he sent 2 pictures. In each picture, there was a woman lying in a pool of blood with her throat slit and a bloodied crowbar next to her body.
Aishwarya, something like this on social media that I use,
Yeah.
so Instagram,
Yeah.
it would be immediately flagged and removed.
Yes.
Is that not the case with Discord?
No, which is what made me set up the context for Discord
Right.
as sort of the wild, wild west
Yeah.
out there, where none of this is flagged. I'm sure servers have their own rules, but if you've been on the server for long enough, the server members themselves are kind of
And
intrigued
Discord has
going-
something called Discord mods, right? Moderators.
moderators,
So
yeah.
they might be
Yes,
responsible
yes,
for...
yes.
Interesting. Okay.
These pictures weren't removed. The women in both pictures were 2 different women, with one clearly older than the other. Even after seeing these pictures, the members of the server weren't convinced this wasn't a joke. Then came another text from Subhuman. I killed my mom and granny so far, waiting for sister in 5 minutes and then dad in 1 hour. While these pictures didn't fully convince the group these claims were real, it did put them on edge. 2 members of the server, John and Ayub, who were particularly alarmed by the texts, ended up creating a private chat amongst themselves to discuss what they thought was going on. And the first thing they decided to do was reverse engineer these photographs online to see if they were sourced from some internet website to play a prank. One by one, some of the more tech-savvy members of the group scoured the depths of the internet for these pictures. But to everyone's shock, they were nowhere other than that one Discord server. While the group was busy figuring out how they could help and possibly save the lives of 2 people, another picture was dropped in the chat. This time of a much younger woman, who Subhuman claimed was his sister. She appeared to be lying in a pool of her blood too, but in what looked like the entrance area of the house, making everyone believe Subhuman had killed her the moment she entered the home. This picture was more haphazard, more chaotic, and Subhuman agreed. He told the group why. His sister had fought him back for over 10 minutes, crying for her life, begging for him to stop. At one point, his server name had been Allah, at another, it was Don't Deserve Life. All players had server names that weren't really their name. Secondly, the group had no idea where Subhuman was living. Was he in the US, the UK, some South American country? They had absolutely no idea, even though they had shared this Discord server with him for years. So this group didn't even know which country's police to call and what information to give them. We think a server member is killing his family, but we don't know in which country, state, or city isn't an acceptable answer when you call the police. Now the group had 2 strategies. Some of the members will try to get more information out of Subhuman, like his name and location, while a different group will try to figure his IP address out and see where he's located. While the group is figuring this out, Subhuman actually came online to play the game Perfect World for many hours while he claimed to be waiting for his father to come back home. This message motivated the group to try harder to track him. There was a life hanging in the balance, a life they could all try to save if they could alert the authorities in time.
Aishwarya, it's like these Discord kids were playing a real life
real
video
life
game all
game,
of a sudden.
absolutely.
And part of me wants to berate them for getting pleasure out of this and not telling the authorities. But
they can't.
What could they have
What
done?
could they have
I'm trying
done?
to think. If
Yeah,
you don't know where this person is, you tweet and tag all the police departments of the world, hoping one would click.
It's impossible.
It's so impossible.
And if the aim is to save a life,
if
that's the focus in the moment,
to doing it yourself is probably the best case.
So one group is trying to talk to him while the other is tracking his IP address down, but obviously, tracking someone's IP address down is not a walk in the park. There was a possibility Subhuman was using a VPN, which could lead to the team getting fake IP addresses. Over the course of many hours, the group tracked down multiple different IP addresses, not knowing which one was the correct one. Then, everyone's heart dropped when they heard their computers ping with a new message from Subhuman. I've just slaughtered my entire family and will most likely spend life in jail if I manage to survive. I hope I made you laugh at one point or another. I hope you remember the good times. I will miss you all. End quote. A different server member responded, I just woke up. I'm sorry, do you want pics? Subhuman asked. Okay, the other player responded. This time, Subhuman sends pictures of his father too. He too was killed with his throat slit. In this chat, Subhuman details how he killed them, first hacking them all in the head with a crowbar and then slitting their throats once they were unconscious. It was easy enough to do with his mom and grandma because they were taking their afternoon nap, but his sister and father were harder to kill. Yet, he succeeded. That's not your family, one of the members wrote. It is, Subhuman responded. To make people believe his story, he sent them a picture of his family when they were all alive and at what appears to be a birthday celebration. They all look happy and are cutting a cake. Looking at this photo, it's obvious to the server members that the happy family in this picture includes the very same people who now lay bloodied and dead in the other pictures sent by Subhuman. I mean, if it is, why did you do it? Asked a member. Are you another troll? Subhuman responded, No, I'm sorry to say. Trying to prove he did in fact kill them all, Subhuman uploaded a picture of himself with wet hair, seemingly having just left a shower, with a bloody knife in his hand. Now the group was trying to get details out of him. Are you turning yourself in? One member asked. Yes, of course. I deserve the punishment. Wish you had talked it out before doing it, the member said. It's been my plan for 3 years. I couldn't have delayed it any longer, said Subhuman. It honestly doesn't affect me. I'm just sad that you chose to go this way. I'm sure your family loved you since you were able to kill them through their trust of safety. Even if you were at the lowest spot, you can fight your way up. But as you said, what's done is done. I can't see why your actions make any good or sense, but you do. Murder remains a major crime of selfishness, though. I'm just sad that you chose to damage others and yourself. Why their lives and not yours? This person asked. I'm a pathetic coward and a subhuman. Since I'm atheist, I believe there's no afterlife, so I was scared to die, and I wanted them to die so that they didn't suffer knowing how much of a pathetic subhuman I was. It's all very selfish. I'm just pathetic. What about your girlfriend, dude? Asked someone. Broke up with her so long ago. Didn't want her to be associated with any of this. Give me your location if you want to be caught, asked someone. Not yet, said Subhuman. There are hours and hours worth of conversations like these which give everyone a peek into this murderer's mind right after a crime, and it's sad and it's fascinating. He tells the group he had been shaking all day and only stopped shaking after he killed his dad, almost as if his nervousness wasn't because he was committing the mass murder of his family, but because he was scared he couldn't succeed at it. He tells the group things like how he needed to, quote, pee and poo all the time, and asks the group if he should move all of the bodies in the same room so he could share, quote, one last group picture with his dead family members. Subhuman kept on texting, minute after minute, revealing countless other eerie details that the group kept screenshotting to turn over to the authorities. He kept privately messaging members from the server, apologizing to them, and then asking them if they wanted to see pictures of the crime scene. Over this time, many members had contacted their local police authorities to see if anyone listened. But sure enough, since they had absolutely no information on them, nobody paid any attention to the claims of these young gamers. This community was witnessing the inside of a crime they could have prevented if only they knew more, but they couldn't. Even though they couldn't stop this mass family murder from taking place in front of their eyes, though, this group of gamers and hackers were just about to crack this case open for the police. Remember the server member working on tracking down Subhuman's IP address? Let's call him X. X had, after hours of trying, succeeded. Subhuman was based out of the city of Markham in Ontario, Canada, but they still did not have his real name or a proper home address. But then, Subhuman gave the group a huge clue to his exact location. He asked members of the group if he could transfer them money to their PayPal account. Quote, just because you're a good friend, I want to give you money because I won't need it where I'm going. Gave lots of people money already, end quote. The moment Subhuman said this, a member named Bianca knew she would have what the group needs. Bianca agreed to receive the money from him and then meticulously went through the PayPal account from which the money came. On that account, she found a payment made from Subhuman's PayPal in the past, which had a home address which coincided with the Markham location found from the IP address. That was it. The group was now staring at this home through their Google Maps screen. Quickly, group member X, who had tracked down the IP address, then contacted the Minnesota Police Department, which is where X was based out of, but the Minnesota Police Department connected X to the Markham Police Department.
So an American police department connected to the Canadian Police Department.
Yes.
Okay. That's the first I'm hearing.
Me too. I've never heard of that.
It's sort of like Interpol, but Interpol is European.
Precisely.
So this is like whatever treaty or system
between
the Canadians
the US
and the Americans
Canada.
have. But that's awesome.
Yeah. To the Markham Police Department, X gave a detailed account of what he and his friends had been witnessing for the last almost 24 hours. The police now began a little background check of their own, seeing if the IP address was correct by reaching out to the internet service provider and getting the right authorization to conduct a welfare check at the home address they had received. While the police did this, members of the Discord server kept Subhuman engaged in a conversation, asking him questions like what he was going to do with all of his time now. To which Subhuman replied, eat junk food, visit my ex-girlfriend, drink, smoke. I've never drank alcohol before, or a cigarette. As these eerie conversations went on, the police had tracked down the internet service provider, gotten the name of the family living in the home, and was ready to pay a visit to the Zamans.
If you have made it this far into the Desi Crime episode, you're an OG Desi Crime fam, which means ideally you would have hit the subscribe button or the follow button if you're listening on Spotify.
But maybe you haven't.
if you haven't, to protect yourself from our wrath and fury, I would advise you to go hit the subscribe button, knowing that it really helps us
Right
out.
now, just go do it. In 1988, in the beautiful, populated, hustling, bustling country of Bangladesh, a young couple was falling in love and about to get married. Menhaz Zaman and Mumtaz Begum. The two were each other's antithesis. Menhaz was as shy and reserved as Mumtaz was lively and outgoing, but they both fit like a pair of jigsaw pieces, complementing each other's shortcomings and completing each other's lives. While Bangladesh is where Menhaz and Mumtaz's love story began, this couple yearned for more than what they thought Bangladesh had to offer. They yearned for more money, more gratifying jobs, better schools for the children they knew they wanted to have, a safer home. And so, with dreams in their eyes and hope in their hearts, the couple decided to leave all ties behind and move to the country of their dreams in the year 1990, Canada. And in Canada, having settled in Ontario, the couple's dreams finally started to come true right in front of their eyes. In Ontario, Mumtaz created her own life, her own circle of friends to visit and events to attend, where she quickly gained everyone's respect for her deeply caring and loving nature. If anyone needed to be driven to the doctor at short notice and didn't have a car to get them, Mumtaz would be there for them at any hour of the day. If someone had a family emergency and didn't have time to make food in the home, Mumtaz would be standing outside their door with one of her beloved dishes in hand, telling her friends to take a breather. While Mumtaz was generous and flamboyant, Menhaz was respected for different reasons. He was humble, deeply hardworking, and a devout Muslim, protective of his family. For them, he would move mountains. Initially, he was the family's sole breadwinner, working as a taxi driver in Toronto. This was a job Menhaz excelled at, being awarded as the Employee of the Month for many months, year after year, and being recognized as the company's most trustworthy and proficient drivers. While Menhaz had a humble job to begin with, his dedication and the family's ability to save and invest their earnings led them to owning 3 properties over the Greater Toronto region, which they then turned into rental properties, from where they began earning even more steady income. It was then that Mumtaz took on the role of running these rental properties, having always been the one in the relationship who was good with people. The couple stayed busy, yes, but their lives were only looking upwards when 6 years after moving to Canada, in the year 1996, they gave birth to their first child, a son whom they named Menhaz. Now, with Menhaz's birth, Mumtaz and Menhaz needed help raising their children and running their household while continuing to hold successful careers. And so, shortly after Menhaz was born, Mumtaz's mother, Firoza Begum, moved to Canada to alleviate some of these pressures off of the couple. With Firoza's help, the couple thrived and went on to get pregnant again in 1998, this time giving birth to a beautiful baby daughter they named Melissa. Eventually, the couple bought another larger property in Markham, which they moved into, now having 4 rental properties, and were earning more than ever before, living better than ever before. But all of this money wasn't being spent frivolously. It was being spent on raising their kids. As Melissa and Menhaz were growing up, the expectations with them were clear. They were to gain educations in highly employable fields, and there were no two ways about it. They were to study medicine or engineering or law and do better for themselves than the couple had been able to do when they were young. But as all Desi kids know, sometimes these very strict expectations placed on us by our parents come at a cost our parents aren't necessarily willing to pay. For the Zamans, that cost was their daughter's rebellious behavior. As Melissa grew older, she defied her parents more and more with every passing year. She would get caught shoplifting and would get into fights at school. She would regularly sneak out of her home at night and then went on to make a boyfriend, which her family disapproved of. She wore a lot of makeup, she smoked weed with her friends, and went out drinking. Now, other than the shoplifting and the trouble at school, the rest of this sounds perfectly normal to me if done in moderation, obviously.
Dude, she sounds like a fun teenager I'd
Every
be friends
normal
with.
teenager,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. We've all done some, if not all of these to varying degrees in those crazy teenage years. But to the conservative Muslim sensibilities of Menhaz and Mumtaz, their daughter was simply out of control. While Melissa did well academically and wanted to study to be a neurosurgeon, that didn't make up for her otherwise defiant behavior in the eyes of her parents. In retaliation, Monirose became even stricter with Melissa, hitting her and locking her out of the house if she came late, confiscating her devices for months on end, and leading to physical and verbal fights so violent neighbors would call the police. Melissa would have fights with Mumtaz too, with Mumtaz cancelling her 15th birthday party at the last minute because she didn't like what her daughter wanted to wear. Quote, "I don't care, the party is more for you anyway," Melissa had responded back to her mother. The tension between Monirose and Melissa grew to such degrees that when she turned 20, Melissa packed her bags and left her parents' home to go live with her boyfriend while preparing to get into York University, the uni of her dreams. But while Melissa gave the couple all this trouble, they had a golden child in the form of Menhaz. He was quiet and reserved, stuttering, looking at the floor whenever he spoke to strangers, even more than his father was. But he did well enough academically, was respectful of the rules in the house, went to the mosque with his father, and had ambitions of becoming an engineer. He was Mumtaz's favorite child, and it showed in the disparity between how Melissa was treated and how Menhaz was treated. For Menhaz, Mumtaz cleaned his room, home cooked all his meals, always picked him up from school, and drove him wherever he wanted to go. In fact, Menhaz had already gotten into and started attending the York University engineering program, which was undoubtedly highly competitive and was also Melissa's dream school. The family left no stone unturned in bragging about their brilliant son to any guests who came over, gushing over his brilliant uni grades and future job prospects. In the eyes of the family's social circle, Menhaz was the child to aspire to be and the example given to all other kids. But while all of this might sound very sweet to you and may make you feel like Menhaz lived a life of love, to him, this only felt like ever-mounting pressure. In fact that his sister had run away from home meant even more pressure now onto the head of Menhaz to fulfill his parents' dreams and ambitions. To relieve this pressure off of himself, Menhaz found an escape online, completely unbeknownst to his parents, in the game Perfect World, and a Discord community called Perfect World Void, which was built by and for players of the game. Now, that's normal, you might think. This is a well-performing kid who is going to a prestigious university for a daunting degree and has strict parents. It's no surprise he found something to escape to. We all do it in some form or another, whether it be a sport or music or some art we love just for the sake of a hobby. Quote, "It wasn't clear if he liked school, but he always came to class and he always paid attention. He was just an average Markham kid. He did well in school, went home and played video games. I know hundreds of kids in Markham who are just like that." End quote. That is how Menhaz's high school friends described him. And you're right, even if Menhaz's parents knew of his love for the game, I doubt they would have had huge problems with it as long as Menhaz continued to excel at uni and graduated to get a proper job. Only, there was a problem. A very big problem. A very big secret that Menhaz had kept from his family, and a lie that he had been living for many years. Menhaz had actually never gotten into York University. He wasn't in that college. He wasn't studying engineering there. He wasn't academically brilliant. And he wasn't at all on track for a high-paying engineering job upon graduation.
How did he manage to keep up this facade?
Yes, that is a great question. We're coming to some details of that.
Like, were the parents that desperate to vicariously live their dreams from their child that they're oblivious to reality?
We're getting to that discussion, exactly that discussion. Menhaz was actually admitted to a much smaller and much lesser known community college called Seneca Community College, a fact he was too ashamed to tell his parents for fear of disappointing them. And so Menhaz's lie began when he created a fake acceptance letter from York and began leaving for college every day, only to sit at a cafe and play Perfect World instead.
Shit!
Not only was Menhaz not attending York University, he would also barely ever go to Seneca Community College, where he began failing all his classes, and he was on track to not be able to graduate at all. Eventually, he even dropped out of the community college, living an even bigger lie than before. This was a lie that for Menhaz was slowly spiraling out of control. The more he lied about his life at York Uni, the harder he found it to tell his parents the truth. And the longer he hid the truth, the more introverted, insecure, and reclusive he got, even hiding up in his room on occasions like his father's birthday, for which friends and family had gathered.
Aishwarya, I think I've talked about this book before on the podcast, but it reminds me of Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, sure.
There is a character, Raskolnikov. I hope I'm getting the name right. But it's like Dostoevsky just perfectly mapped the character of Menhaz.
Yeah.
Because once you weave a web of lies intricate enough that you yourself get lost in it,
Yeah.
and I think many of us have at some point or the other
Done it.
done it, in varying degrees and
Yeah.
for different things. But you start to lose the plot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you start becoming a victim of your own lies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this seems to be that on steroids.
And Menhaz was going crazy. He would spend hours upon hours upon hours playing the game, barely taking a break to eat and shower and sleep. His online friends recall playing with Menhaz right before going to sleep, but then finding him online even when they woke up and started playing the next day. As Menhaz began to create and indulge in this fantasy world, he also slowly lost his faith in Islam and began calling himself an atheist. Quote, "I'm not being racist. Islam is a religion which is cancer to the current world, bro. If you go to a Muslim country like Iraq, they'll make you cover up if you're a girl. Shit is so f***ed. Talking to all Muslim dogs. I think Islamic people should be tested before they're accepted into modern countries. Their values don't reflect modern morality whatsoever." End quote. This is what read one of his Discord chats with his friends. It was at this time, around March of 2019, that Menhaz began to joke about killing his family or taking his own life. In one conversation, he can be seen telling a friend that he was going to leave the game. "Where will you go?" the friend asked back. "Perfect world, jail. Gonna kill my parents and go to jail, yo." End quote. To everyone, these were just jokes. Dark and weird jokes, yes, but jokes nonetheless. Quote, "In the last months, his humor became extremely dark over time. He talked about suicide a lot. But to me at least, he all made it seem like a dark joke. When he started saying he would kill his family, I think most people like me just thought of it as another weird dark joke. Even when he attached a date to when he would do the gruesome act, I just thought he wanted to make it even darker and then troll everyone on the date he said. Deep down, I knew it was real, but I still couldn't believe it. I thought he was kidding," said one of his Discord friends responsible for helping catch him. Now, something very interesting was happening, in my opinion. Menhaz loved his parents, yes, but he couldn't bring himself to agree with them. He didn't want to be an engineer. He didn't agree with their religious outlook. He didn't want the pressure. So his love for his parents, coupled with his changing views, resulted in him hating himself. Instead of hating his parents or lashing out at them as so many young kids do, and as Melissa did, Menhaz internalized the hate. He considered himself to be the failure, changing his name to things like "don't deserve life" and "subhuman," regularly calling himself a coward and talking about taking his own life. This love he had for his parents was obvious when, in June of 2019, just a month before the Perfect World Discord community would call the cops to the Zaman home, Menhaz gave a speech in front of more than 100 people for his parents' 25th wedding anniversary, talking about how lucky he was to have parents like the one he had, so loving and caring. That day, at the celebration, the family danced and joked and laughed, with friends saying Momtaz was blushing like a newly married bride. The family looked perfect on the outside, with everything going for them.
It was around this time that he had begun ideating about the murder
of his parents.
begun cracking those sort of dark jokes, which were
Absolutely.
merely prophetic statements.
Yeah.
And on the
In
outside,
these happy moments, yeah. Just like Aryaan said, on the inside, Menhaz was crumbling. Yet nobody on the outside had even the slightest idea. Which brings me to a question and the point Aryaan was making previously. How does one hide a secret like this for years, not just months? Sure, you can fake an acceptance letter, but I'm thinking of my time at college and how many things I'd have to fake if I was lying about where I was studying. For example, his parents were paying for his college just like mine paid for mine, which meant they had to wire transfer money to the college in the name of the college. How did he fake something like that? How did his parents never ask to meet his friends from college? If they had, this lie would have been impossible to maintain. How did they never drop by on campus to pick him up from class? How did they never ask to see an exam result? What's even weirder is that while Menhaz continued to lie about his college over years, Melissa actually got into York University, moved back home, and began mending her relationship with her parents. How did she never just pick up the phone after one of her classes and ask to meet Menhaz for a coffee or lunch on campus? It's so wild to me how many things had to be ignored for this lie to continue. Either Menhaz was just incredibly talented at being able to fake all sorts of documents, or his parents barely had the time to care about these details. Or maybe they just didn't care whether he had friends or what his extracurriculars was. Maybe all they cared about was him being able to get a job as an engineer. I don't know, I just find this very odd.
We are not new to people being really talented at creating false narratives and
Yeah.
identities. I mean, we covered the case of Bobby, Sweet Bobby, and in that case, they were able to weave a narrative of a life that did not exist.
About Menhaz's age.
I do think all his parents cared about were grades. Now, this is a descriptive claim, not a normative claim. Descriptive claim meaning I'm trying to describe what happened. I'm not trying to value judge whether the parents
Were
were
right or wrong.
wrong. I mean, that's an entirely different discussion. One that is festers in the Desi community abroad, where
Absolutely.
I mean, pressure is not just on Indian kids in India, but it can sometimes be multifold on Indian kids abroad.
Outside, yeah.
So what's the value of that? I know have that discussion because again, these migrant parents do put in a lot of effort into giving their kids a different life, a better life. But yeah, I don't think they gave two shits about his friend group.
I
And,
agree.
There's one place where Indian parents, I personally believe, lose out, where they forget to socially educate their children in the pursuit of academically educating them, resulting in, creating incels and these sort of keyboard heroes or these shelled individuals. I've met so many Indian kids, really, really smart kids that are a shell of themselves because all they've ever learned are textbooks. So it feels like a textbook case of that happening again.
And it sounds like you're describing Menhaz to the T.
Yeah.
Obviously, Menhaz was screwing up of his own free will. His parents aren't to be blamed for his lying and deception, but I think all parents are responsible for the environment they create for their children. I truly believe, like Aryaan said, we have a sort of parenting problem in South Asia if our youth finds it easier to jump off of buildings, hang themselves, or kill their families rather than disappoint their families with what is a very normal failure. And I believe in some key ways the Zamans did fail. The actions of both their kids are testament to it. Regardless of what the Zamans could have done to catch this lie sooner though, there was one thing that was bound to bring the truth to the front. Something that Menhaz had absolutely no way of avoiding, faking, or ignoring. That thing was his now looming graduation. Menhaz had maintained this lie for 4 years, and his parents were excited to watch their son throw his cap in the air, graduate, and enter the working world. Menhaz had even given them a graduation date, July 28th. Him giving them this date for graduation could have meant that before then, he was going to come clean to them about his lie, accept the consequences of his action, apologize profusely, and pick his life up from there. But to Menhaz, this date meant something else. It meant he was going to commit mass murder, and it needed to happen before July 28th. So when Menhaz woke up on the morning of July 27th, he had murder on his mind while his family gushed in excitement about the graduation they had to go to the next day. That morning, his father left for work and Melissa went for her part-time shift at a store called Food Basics. With Moniru's and Melissa gone now, Menhaz had an easier job at hand, killing his mother and aged grandmother who both went to take naps at around 3 p.m. As he picked up his father's crowbar from the home toolkit and a knife from the kitchen, he felt knots in his stomach. But to him, there was no going back now. The shame of telling his parents was simply too much. He struck his mother with a crowbar and slit her throat first, and then headed over to his grandmother, leaving them both to bleed in their rooms. Then he played some more perfect world, told his Discord community about the murders, took a nap, and then waited for his sister with the same crowbar and knife in hand. Quote, "It's been my plan for 3 years. Literally told my parents my uni graduation was July 28th. I couldn't have delayed it any longer," he wrote on Discord in the middle of the killings. "Believe me, if I could rewind time, I would, but after failing half my subjects, I had to repeat my courses. It's here in second semester I started getting depressed, became an atheist, and ultimately created this plan. So for 3 years, I've been telling my parents I go to uni, when actually I was just hanging out at the mall 4 days a week. The mall is on the same route as my uni. I did this because I don't want my parents to feel the shame of having a son like me. I chose to kill them instead of me out of cowardice. Due to me being an atheist, I believe that this is the only life we get. I know it might sound confusing, but what's done is done, and what had been planned has been concluded. I'm sorry if this makes you upset. Please try and remember the good times." End quote. When Melissa walked into the house, little did she know that her older brother, who would always jump into her fights with her mom to protect her, was now going to be the reason she will never go on to live another day and fulfill another dream. He killed her, just like he killed his mother and grandmother, but she seems to have been the only one who had a chance to fight back. After killing her, he sent more pictures to the group, took a shower, posed with the bloody knife, and played more perfect world. Hours later, he killed his father Moniruz the same way and finally felt a sense of peace and calm. The charade was over. The 4 people who loved him the most would now never know their son's deepest, darkest secret, but the rest of the world was about to find out. But Menhaz didn't run or hide. He sat in his room, playing Perfect World some more, awaiting the arrival of Markham police, talking about smoking, drinking, and possibly visiting his ex-girlfriend. When his online community asked him why he kept sharing pictures of the crime scene, he had an eerily sad response. "Parts of me wants it to spread faster, so I get caught faster, and this purgatory I'm in ends." When the Discord community succeeded in alerting the police and the police made their way to the Zaman house for a welfare check, they had not the slightest idea what they were going to find inside. In their mind, these were all just a bunch of kids and maybe they were all joking or maybe Menhaz was joking. The moment they parked their police cars outside the Zaman home at 3 p.m. on July 28th, the day of Menhaz's fake graduation, they saw a shy, timid, spectacled boy out on the balcony who then went in when he saw the cops. But before he opened the door for the cops, he sent one last text message to his Discord friends. "The police are here. Goodbye." Inside the home, the cops stumbled on the gruesome multiple homicide, which quickly made Menhaz a very specific type of murderer, a family annihilator as they're called. When Menhaz was finally arrested, the Perfect World Discord community breathed a sigh of relief. Bianca, the player who had used PayPal to find Zaman's home address, said, "Around 3 a.m. that same night, I couldn't sleep. This happened only 12 kilometers from me, so I became anxious. Earlier that day, about 1 a.m., he was saying he would go visit his ex-girlfriend, and we all thought he was going to kill her or something. I managed to sleep at 6 a.m. after calling the cops sometime between 3 and 5. I came back online around 11 a.m. and noticed that articles were starting to show up about him getting arrested and was relieved." End quote. Quickly after his arrest, Menhaz told the police everything in graphic detail and accepted his fate. He was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, but eventually only got charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder for his father, sister, and grandmother. His lawyers argued the first murder, the one of his mother, the woman who loved him the most, was involuntary, and so was second-degree murder. Because he confessed to the crime, Menhaz's case never even went to trial.
Because this is a preliminary hearing, the evidence presented in court is subject to a publication ban, so there's little we can tell you about what happened here today. It's not clear how long the proceeding will last, but it has been scheduled for 7 days.
He was pronounced guilty in a virtual hearing on account of COVID, where his last words to the world were, "I would like to just apologize to anyone I have impacted negatively with my actions, especially to the people who knew my family, friends and loved ones who I know could have never seen something like this from me." This apology is kind of weird too, with him not once mentioning the pain caused to the people he killed, to the people whose lives he cut short. He's apologizing to people who never expected him to kill. The judge ended the case by saying, "Words such as brutal, cruel, cold, and callous do not begin to convey the enormity of his violence. It's difficult to imagine a more horrific way to take a human life than by slitting the victim's throat." Mr. Zaman did so not just once, but 4 separate times over a span of hours. No right-thinking member of society would see any remote correlation between the imminent disclosure of the secret of Mr. Zaman's non-attendance at school and the vicious taking of the lives of the 4 people closest to him. It was a betrayal of trust that took place in the family home, where everyone should feel safe. End quote. Today, Menhaz sits in a prison in Canada where he is sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 40 years. That means Menhaz will only ever possibly see the world, the real world outside, when he will be 64 years of age. But behind him, he's left a family broken and shattered and a community shocked at how close death can sometimes be to us. This is a case about murder and the world we create online, yes. But this is a case also of how we as South Asians raise our youth. I'm no expert on that matter, but maybe it will do us all good to remember that our responsibility as a society isn't to generate lawyers and doctors and engineers. It's to raise happy people, fulfilled people, loving people, and maybe that will go a much further way in creating the perfect world we want. If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.